Hey,
Hello.
hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Spin Legal on January the 15th, 2025, our second episode of 25, episode number 49, with Angela and myself, Peter Giblett. We are partners at Invictus Legal LLP, and tonight our topic is how long does a law firm have to keep my records? And I think that's an important thing. It's an important topic because customers come in here. We hold a lot of information about the customer, not necessarily all provided by the customer. Some provided by the opposing party. Some provided by investigations that law firms carry out. But all of that is information that must be kept, archived, and if necessary, made available. Right?
Yep.
So it's an important topic to discuss. Okay, so if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so at 905-688-5598. Email Angela at angela@weareinvictus.legal, or Peter at peter@weareinvictus.legal, and our website is weareinvictus.legal. There you go.
Yep.
So that's the question of the day: is how long does a law firm need to keep my records? Because so a person who's walking in through the door today and says, "Hey, Angela, I've got a problem. I need you to help me," right? When typically it's going to take the relationship with that customer's a year or two, typically, and before their file gets closed. It's when their file gets closed, and let's look on the happy side. Is like, hey, they're walking away with $1 million, and yep, thank you, Angela, you did a wonderful job for me.
Yep.
Not $1 million, but hey, you walk away with the success. Walk away with a success, and maybe you do get $1 million, but not very often. Most files in Canada don't give $1 million. Let's be blunt about that, right? But you walk away with a success. You come out and you say, "Hey, thank you very much, Angela. I'm on my way, but Angela's got issue. Angela's got duties and legal duties about those records that she's maintained." All right. So that's what this session is all about today. Okay. So one important point to note for everybody is records are always confidential. Now, if I take my pen and I underline the name always, I should be underlining it probably 500 times?
Yes. And
Right?
this is why we do a lot of things. We maintain things on cloud-based systems with passwords, different things. We don't want to have people having our files, like physical files. Yes, we try to maintain them in locked filing cabinets, and there's a certain period of time you have to keep them. And then there's electronic versions too, where we have to keep them electronically and move them over to our cloud, which even after they're closed, we maintain them for a certain period of time, just in case something else comes up. Okay, there's different periods of time that files have to be maintained.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's generally 7 years. Is that?
Well, actually, that's what I thought walking into today. But according to the Law Society, it could be up to 15 years.
Yep, depending on the type of file it is.
On the type of file it is, yeah. Exactly. Because the Law Society is put out a general retention policy that is stating that files should be retained for up to 15 years. All right. So that's an important factor to consider. So if you're thinking about retaining a lawyer or paralegal in Ontario, think about how those files are maintained, how long they have to be retained. The other thing is that not all of them have to necessarily be put in in files like this. They don't have to be maintained in a file like this. They can be maintained and retained in CD or DVD type format, can't they?
Yeah. Okay. Put it into cloud format and copied back with CD or DVDs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is, because pretty soon, if you want to retain physical files and you got a busy practice, like how much square footage do you want to have in your office? And how much do you want to pay? See, if you're a lawyer or paralegal working from home, you have to consider the storage of closed files.
And
you may not have the room to store them at home, so you might have to rent out a storage facility, and the storage facility has to be a place that's climate controlled, insured, where that's no fire can catch on it, floods, mold, things like that could deteriorate the files over time. So you have to pay somebody to look after it well. So
yeah, and that there is four files I'm currently working on, right?
Exactly.
So those files get quite big quite quickly.
Right? I try to keep a lot of mine electronically.
Yep.
And when someone comes in and I try to immediately give them a copy of the originals so that I don't get stuck with a copy of the originals, but my physical file includes a copy of the originals. So when I start to work on something. And then electronically, I send it to them by email so they know how things are going electronically.
And for each of these files, and I'm just going to grab one of them, the biggest file in that bundle is quite a thick one, right? Now that particular file, there's probably 5 times that amount of paperwork electronically held. Right, so it's not, we don't by any means, the vast majority, I think for us, I always say to my my clients, the master copy is what's in the electronic version. Right. So the point being is that once I close a client file, and we went through close to a number of client files this last few weeks, basically we have a duty to actually put them in the closed section, and there are some rules about closing files as well.
Yeah, and these things too. And when a file is ready to be destroyed, we have to put something on there. We keep an electronic file and a list of which files have been destroyed, who the client is, when the client's file opened, when it closed, what type of matter it is, and how it got destroyed and who authorized it.
Yeah.
Okay, so these things have to be maintained because the thing is, like say after the 7 years, 15 years, or whatever is up, somebody's going to have to know that there was such a client in here, and the client's name is here forever because we need to know this for conflict purposes.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is here it says this is in the draft policy that is written by the Law Society. So file retention policy that the Law Society suggests is that no file should be closed unless the retainer has been completed and terminated. A final account, if any, has been forwarded to the clients. All accounts have been paid or forgiven. Right? There is a final distribution to the client and accounting of all trust balances relating to the file. The client property has been returned to the client unless otherwise agreed, and it's a plan to stay in contact with the client or to receive future instructions. There's no outstanding undertakings or trust conditions. A letter or email has been sent to the client advising them that the matter has been completed and that all documents and property belonging to the client have been returned. It indicates how the files will be stored, and that if the client requires copies of the document from the file stored off-site, an administrative fee will be charged to retrieve the files, and on the file destruction date, that the file will be destroyed on or after the file destruction date that has been agreed with the client.
Yeah.
So those are the closing criteria for any particular file.
Yeah, and it's
Right?
very important too to also consider the type of files. Like if you're representing somebody on a speeding ticket, right? I don't think you need to represent the file for 15 years and maintain it.
Well, they actually say, okay, so the Law Society is saying that they maintain records here, and they're talking about. Well, we were talking about, speeding tickets is 50. You're not going to maintain it for 15 years, but they are talking about, for example, criminal 97% of all cases are a result. You don't need records beyond 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about 10 to 15 years, 1.4% of files, and 1.4% of files over 15 years. I would think that, for example, in a criminal law practice, the ones that probably stay open, and I'm just thinking logically here. For example, if you've got a client who's given a life sentence, you probably need that file open
Mm-hmm.
until 10 years after they've gotten out of prison.
I think so, especially if they're going to be coming back to you eventually for a pardon.
Well, yeah, exactly, and I'm thinking along the lines of not just pardons, but also there might be appeals and things like that.
Appeals,
You can't.
pardons, or other types of subsequent issues regarding post-sentencing issues.
Yeah. Well, there might be, for example, an appeal. Something may be in your file that didn't get aired properly in court that might actually impact an appeal.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, you'd probably need to keep that file for probably 10 years after that particular individual, got out of prison. All right. Other ones that they're talking about here, real estate. Some of the real estate, they've got claims on real estates that have been 50 odd years later. Real estate actually has a longer period for retention because real estate deals have to be maintained for at least 15 years, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Plaintiff litigation, so for example, small claims matters,
injury has to maintain for a longer period of time too.
Well, plaintiff litigation, that's the smaller amount that's personal injury. 98% is kept under 10 years. Mm-hmm. Corporate law, 94% is under 10 years. Family law, 92% is under 10 years. Defense litigation, that's 98%. That's criminal defense work. It's 98.5 is under 10 years. The longest case on that has gone back 24 years. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Wills and estates, 80% is under 10 years. And the longest case there is over 45 years. Can you imagine? They haven't settled the will 45 years later. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty bad, isn't it? Right. So what are the, okay, so that's that actually, I don't know that I'd want to be, wills, that's pretty bad. Most labor ones are done, 98% of them are finished in 10 years. Intellectual property, 98% are finished in 10 years. Tax is a bit of a hang on. Tax is only 88% finished in 10 years. So with tax records, you need to keep them slightly longer. Hey, Mr. Accountant, you need to keep them longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So securities and bankruptcy are 96 and 97% done in 10 years. So most files are done in 10 years, right?
Yep. One of my files, there was about 4 or 5 years, would be the longer period of time with some of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And most of it's because of delays, like human rights, things like that.
The Malathi court.
Yeah. Landlord and tenant board.
Well, actually, I think for all of it, we knock the landlord and tenant board, but they're pretty quick now. They're
They're
getting through
getting
their,
there.
yeah,
It's just
getting
that
there.
I
You know,
used to
we
get
could
the
still
hearings in 4 to 6 weeks. I want them back to that.
yeah, we can still criticize them, but they are getting there. They're improving. They've made dramatic improvements in the landlord and tenant board. Okay, so retaining client files after closure. So basically every law firm, they say every law firm should have a policy on this, and they're saying, okay, so we talked about it doesn't get closed until certain rules apply. Oh, I opened the same document, right? So you don't close a file until you've got those particular rules applying, but when it's been completed, and the responsible person has reviewed to determine that the file can be closed, then you can close it, but you still end up with, the danger, of course, is that big document that I showed you, there's a possibility that there's a lot in there that is duplicate.
Yeah.
So probably when you're going through
storing files and going through files and cleaning them up was just a lot of very, very dull, boring work that is going through the files, checking for duplicates, checking for errors, checking for other files or pages that may belong to another file. Other
yeah, actually, in the last few weeks, as we were moving office and we were sorting out some aged files,
that drives me crazy. But you have to do that because you have to make sure all the files get merged and married with the same thing. And if you have a client with several files, each of those files have to be about the same matter.
Well, I opened this file up, and out flopped this piece of paper flopping around, showing me a Gmail thing, and I looked at it and went, "That's nothing to do with that file that it just came out of."
Or is an advertisement for duct cleaning or something.
That's the other one is like, yes, exactly, advertising for duct cleaning. So I therefore looked at the back of it and went, there's nothing written on the back, so it's not even scrap paper value.
Yeah, and this gives you value for if you were able to get in to have a law clerk or somebody to help organize your files after they get closed so that these files are actually well put together, right? And then they get stored in an appropriate way. Okay? Sending for storage, you might have to pay for storage if you don't have, like if you're working from home or if you have an office that's just a small office and don't have a lot of room. Okay? There's a lot of different things you have to consider. And these are things. And it's very important that you just don't go to anything like public storage and then throw your files in there. You have to actually have a specialist storage facility to deal with your files.
Okay. The Law Society says generally, based upon the provisions of the Limitations Act, a retention period of 15 years from the date the client file is closed may be appropriate.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe, right? It's not a strict rule, it's a maybe. Yeah. And that such limitation periods are particular for minors, incapacitated clients, claims against licensees who willfully conceal the fact that damage has occurred or that it was caused by the licensee, claims against licensees who willfully misled the client about the appropriateness of proceedings as a means of remedying the damage. So that's actually, those last two are clear reasons why a licensee needs to actually maintain and keep their files.
Yeah, particularly when there's a risk of being accused of malpractice, of any sort, whether you're a lawyer or paralegal. And lawyers, they also engage in areas that are larger in scope than the paralegal, and they probably have a lot more in terms of risk exposure in many of their areas. and it seems that's real estate, estates and wills, that type of thing, and to some extent family law, where some of this stuff where they have to be very careful with malpractice
Yeah.
claims. Personal injury is also very important. So if you're making a personal injury case, very, very important to keep your checklist about everything you need to do, what needs to be included, how you need to argue the case, because a lot of problems can happen with personal injury too. So these things, that's why you have to be very careful. Like defending somebody on a speeding ticket, there's less risk. Okay? Like you usually
Well,
go there and
especially if they walked out of the office with a smile on their face.
yeah, exactly.
You
Okay?
saved them. You know, you
Save them
got their
$100.
you got their 80 over down to a to a 30 over.
Yep, and then you don't have any points lost,
Yeah.
So
And no
these
stuff
things are very important for people, because points can impact their insurance. So there's a lot of things like that where people do it, and then there's other things where paralegals take things. And this is where a lot of stuff has started with respect to paralegals and the role and the scope of paralegal practice. Okay, was initially set at risk management. Some of the stuff we do still could be risky if done the wrong way, or if taking the wrong client, and it's very important that if you're taking a case, that the case can go so far, and that you're not guaranteeing any results.
Yeah.
Guaranteeing results is a great way to get yourself in trouble.
Okay. The other question, of course, is that you've got to remember your obligation to maintain confidentiality survives the retainer, and as a result must be maintained when disposing of client files. For example, if you're shredding or incinerating paper documents, you must ensure the confidentiality is maintained during both the destruction process and the disposal. You should keep all records. This is from what the Law Society is saying. All records of all files destroyed and returned to the client in accordance with your file destruction policy, and that should contain the client's name, address, the file number, document brief, file closure date, the file destruction date, the name of the licensee who dealt with it, and other generalized things that we might want to make. In fact, actually, I would argue that probably your electronic records could almost be kept indefinite, forever.
Yeah, because I've had one person who came back and said, "Do you remember me?" And I talked to them a little bit, and then I said, "Okay, I think I do remember you." And I did a case for them in 2014. What do you know? It was still on my computer. I was able to look them up, and I knew about the case.
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So I have all the information that he was dealing with at the time, and how we resolved the issue. That one was mediated. And he's coming back tomorrow to bring us another matter.
Okay. Well, the other thing to think about there is, of course, the electronic records. If you suddenly change the system that you were using, your electronic records might get lost. So if you do that, you have to basically move your electronic records from the old system to the new. And in order to do that, you'll probably need to keep the licenses going for both applications as you're transferring their data over.
Yeah.
But that's for Law Society licensees to think about. Then when you've moved them over, you probably find there's actually somebody within the software company that will have an expertise at transferring data.
Yep. And this is very important because, see, a lot of licensees, they want to cut corners. They want to save costs. They think, I'm through with these files. These are 10 years old. I'm just going to go down.
Yeah, you can't. You can't just do that, can you?
No, he can't, because
Right.
anything that goes out can be found and can be exposed.
Yeah. And actually there was a case, and I think it was England rather than here. There was a case of have you ever been to a dump where there's papers flying around across the top of the dump?
Yep.
Well, there was this lawyer's records flying around all across
Oh
the
my
top of
God.
the
I've seen medical files like that.
Yeah.
They were walk down the street and the person put some stuff out for the garbage. And it was medical files dating back about 15 years of
Yeah.
different people they had. And I just said, don't these people know how to properly dispose of information that's privileged,
Well,
confidential?
in fact, actually, it's a reason why you should actually, generally speaking, you should be trying to hold everything electronic, because then, hey, when I've got this file, when this file is done, if I've got everything electronic, technically, I could just drop this whole thing in the shredder.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
This is what they're doing, like with the electronic health records, which is really interesting. We talked a little bit about that last week, about when you go now to the pharmacist for treatment of minor conditions, like cases of the sniffles and stuff. Hey, so you don't go to the emergency. Anyway, but basically, all of those records, I mean, you go to your pharmacist, they know who your family doctor is. Everything goes on to the electronic health system. So somebody knows when you went to the pharmacy. Somebody knows when you picked up a prescription. Somebody knows when you went to a walk-in clinic. So these things are all recorded, and these records could be accessible by you. And
When you
usually,
go to
the family doctor and primary care, these records would be accumulated, and patient can access them. They can ask their family doctor to get a copy of that. But this is carried on for your benefit, for these records. They don't go anywhere. They're just in the computer system, and they
in
have
fact,
codes and everything to protect them.
Yeah, in fact, actually, one of the things to consider is, of course, electronic storage is becoming cheaper and cheaper as time goes on.
My dentist has an electronic storage system.
Yep.
Even all my x-rays, my pictures, everything are all in there when they just
exactly. Yeah. In fact, actually, last time I was at the doctor's, they had, these are your x-rays. Oh, okay. And you're comparing it to an x-ray or an MRI that was done 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at them, because I was looking at that and he was showing me the tooth, and actually it was really color photographic. Like, these pictures got a lot better over the years. Okay, so now when somebody dies somewhere and they can't identify them, they actually have dental records, and you know where that's coming from.
Oh, yeah.
So they have some kind of record system too. So it's very interesting when these things are done. I'm sure at some point somebody will be putting together something for the legal profession as well.
Well, in fact, actually, when you think about it, that we have these files that either in a physical or electronic format, and if you think about it, we have probably what we have is 100%. Well, we don't have 100%. Where we have, let's say, 90% of what the client has about this information. There's always something that they've forgotten to give us, or
Oh yeah,
there's always something like
we
that.
have it, and that we've given it to the other side when they've never given it to us, so it was never given to the other side.
Yeah, and you think about it, that I've got these records. You've got a file just like this on your your end when we're facing off against one another, right? So those files all have, there's an n number of those files, and then I put in a certain amount of the stuff to the court. So the evidence that I'm putting up to the court is a limited amount. The evidence that you're putting up to the court's a limited amount, etc., etc. So so what other people see is always limited compared to what we see. And if we talk about, this being 100% of the case file, yes, it is, but, but you'll never see 100%.
Then we also have our emails, our email correspondence.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what I do is I put some of them into PDFs so I can add them, It depends on what it is, like an important email that would.
But that's an important. Yeah, that's an important factor. I'm using a different email software now. I'm not using the standard Outlook. I'm utilizing a product called EM Client, and that is actually enabling me to actually take the email. So for the closed files, I can take them offline and put them into an archive. Right. And then, as you say, it's an important thing to actually download those into a
PDF format. Yeah, so that you have that there in the client files. You have a whole history of emails in the order in which they've arrived.
Yeah.
Or were sent out. And it's very important to do that because like some of our clients want to come back and they want to have absolutely everything that was in their file. That's fine. But
again,
the thing is they have to realize it takes time to take every file out, go through it and everything else. Okay? And then we give them the file back. That's fine. Okay? But we have to maintain a back copy of it.
Yeah.
And also some documents that we do not give to the clients because they're more internal documents.
Well, our work.
Yeah.
And let's be clear, there's two types of our work. If I'm taking notes in my, I'm taking notes in my notebook, that's work effort. That's me. My notes relate to, this page relates to the Jones file, the next page relates to the Smith file, etc., etc., etc. So my notebook is a right old kind of mishmash of a lot of notes that I've taken over the years. Many of those notes are also duplicated into the client file.
You know that he didn't, he used to be in IT for many, many, many years, but he still uses a physical notebook to write all that stuff in.
Well, you see, what I can write in the physical notebook that I can't write on a computer system is a reminder, to at 2:00 do such and such.
Yeah.
Right. I can put that into a calendar. I can put that into a calendar entry, but the work I'm working on, the notes I make from a client meeting, very important that they go into, they are recorded. I've got a couple that I use on Evernote now.
Evernote could be done, and then you can copy it onto a notepad and keep it into the client file.
Yeah, well, I can print the note on Evernote and put it into the client file. Exactly that.
And then you just maintain that at the back of your folder, so that if you want to look at what you discussed with the client, and then sometimes you want to go back to the client, says, I remember last time we discussed this. Okay, now where are we at today?
Yep. Oh, yeah. And the interesting thing is that, so I discussed a topic with a client the other day, yesterday, in fact, and today she's actually sent me everything on topic. She sent me a whole, and basically 100 lines about text that were notes that she'd taken in the past.
Yeah, because she wanted to explain how it all began.
Yeah.
And then she got into the counters that she is involved in now. And basically, this is just kind of confirms our own bias that we have about specific situations that some of the people have got themselves into.
But record keeping is an important part of the legal entity, legal field, really. Legal industry.
And another thing that's really good about electronic copies is, say if we're working on cases that are very common, debt collection letters, debt lawsuits, that sort of thing, we have templates.
Yeah.
Okay? And then we can move the templates into each of the different files. okay, so that we have good records of each of the lawsuits or the temp letters that we've sent out, and then we can put them into our timeline so we know how long that we've asked people to respond to us, and then by the time that the time runs out, then it's time to go to the next stage.
Right. And typical with the debt letter, with the debt cases that we've done with a lot of the debt cases, is that you send out this, please settle this debt by this date. When that date runs past, you give them a couple more weeks extra. So then you pick that file up and you kind of, okay, you haven't responded. Time for lawsuits.
Yeah, time to sue.
Then we have the sue party, don't we?
Yeah, and this is one of the very important things that kind of thing. And one of the things that a lot of people have, and it's very, very important because confidentiality is very important in our profession. This is why we have to take great care in how files are stored, where they are stored, and who has access to them. Okay? Yeah. And it's not a good idea for a legal professional, if you're a legal professional, to meet with clients if you've got files all over your desk, okay, with people's names on them and stuff like that. Okay?
Yeah, because the name might only say Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes what happens is they look at that and say, oh, I know Billy Jones.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say the file might only say Smith, but yeah, then the next file says John McIntosh. Oh, yeah. And as you pop out, I wonder if that's the same John McIntosh I know.
Yep. Ooh. That's why these files should never be on your desk. Yeah. If you're seeing a client in your office, make sure the files are set aside somewhere where the client doesn't have visual eyesight of them, and it's out of their reach. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes you might have a shelf behind you or a windowsill or something where you can put them so that nobody could access them that way. I mean, I used to work with somebody who, he was amazing. I don't know how. Like, he'd have files all over the place, paper strewn all over the desk from different files.
But you ask him a question, and he's laying his hands on the piece of paper and waving it at you.
So I went into the office and I made an attempt to start sorting out the files and just putting them in the proper filing system, so, and with the right files, right papers.
And you were accused of ruining his life, weren't you?
He came into the office and he freaked out, right, that I was messing with everything. Now I don't know where everything is. And then I said, okay. So I tested him. I said, okay, where's the quote unquote Jones file or whatever, right? He knew exactly where the Jones file was. And he knew exactly where he was at the Jones file, everything, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So I just said, okay, when a client comes in here, just at least move them somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't care where you move them, but as long as the client doesn't see them, right?
That's actually one of the reasons why we generally meet clients in the boardroom.
Yeah. Meet them in the boardroom or our library. We got a new library set up, which I think is the best room in our house.
Yep. Oh, yeah, nice.
Nice table, all the books on our shelves, and it's quiet. We're only putting internet in there, no phone.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And I want people to be able to rest in the library, to be able to read, relax, and also a place to meet clients.
Okay. So another important factor. Okay. So where was it? Okay. So one of the things that will always has to be is we got to keep a full set of records. We need to know the client's name, the client's address, when they were born, when they died, if that's relevant. The file number.
Even if they're married and their spouses.
Yep. A file number, a brief description of the matter. The date the file was open, the date the file was closed. Although that said, one of the questions about the software that we use is that I actually found I made on a couple of occasions, I forgot to open the file on the day it was actually opened. And the trouble is, if you let it slide, it doesn't open on the right date. It's not opened on the right date.
Yeah.
But the point about it is that
you can go retroactive on it.
Yeah, what I tend to do is I then put the first entry in the log about when, so matching the date when we actually opened actually met with the person.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I didn't open the file till, let's say, the 1st of February, but the client came in on the 3rd of January, I'd put the 3rd of January, even though the file was open.
3rd of January, met the client. February 1st, opened the file, retainer signed, paid, and then you put the retainer into the system. I mean, these things I keep telling people got to be a routine thing to do.
Yeah. Well, that's what all of this is about, right? Mm-hmm. All of this, whether we're talking about, right. So, everything we've talked about to date is routine.
Yeah,
things
exactly.
like records are confidential. That's routine, right?
Yeah. Like, for example, I can't, like, somebody can come into my office and said, "Oh, did you ever see this Peter Smith?" And yeah, I've seen Peter Smith, but I can't tell that person or talk to that person about Peter Smith.
Yeah.
Okay. And they may give me information. "Oh yeah, Peter Smith went to your office last year and he really liked how you treated him. And then he told me to come." I said, good for him. That's all I can say.
But you see, that's exactly the reason why we have rules about records being confidential, about legal practitioners having a duty to maintain records for a period of time, about why we have rules about closing files, right? All of these rules are there for good reason, and why we retain files after closure. So at the moment, because we've just moved office, we've got a whole bunch of boxes that have moved from our file room, right, that are waiting outside our new file room.
Yeah, a whole lot smaller file room. So we had to figure out how to put the other files, where to put those.
So at the moment, we're kind of
juggling
and switching. Hey, what we need though is Harry Potter, like.
Oh yes.
Put them away. Boom. So shrink them
this file.
And shrink them and put them away. And then when we need them back again, Harry, get me the Smith file from 1962. And it reappears. How about that?
Yeah. So we have that. Yeah. So these are things that. Yeah, and the thing is, when you do have a storage and you have them stored, even if it's off-site, accessibility is very important. Say if something happens or a client wants you to come back and take the file or to access it, there's some costs, and you're allowed to charge an administrative cost to get that because there's time involved.
Oh yeah, absolutely there is.
Yeah, because there's always something, and people always say, "Oh well, of course they think that we're supposed to work for free." I had people think that I got funded by legal aid, that this whole office was covered by legal aid. I thought you guys all got funded by legal aid. I said, no.
What makes you think that? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know where they get this information from.
Okay. So here's so this is from the Law Society. While it may be possible for licensees to retain all closed files indefinitely, permanent storage may be impractical and costly. And the word with key emphasis upon costly, and impractical come to that. So how we maintain all of these records is an important question. I mean, we've got a client file out there that's got the client just brought in the other week that's got 15 boxes on it.
Yep.
Right. 15 nice cardboard boxes that we're going to have to sort through.
Yep. And we have to sort through them, although they will all go back to them, but we do have to take things out and we have to photocopy. We're going to have to do a lot of photocopying.
Yeah. So within those 15 boxes, we're probably going to be needing, probably 3 boxes of photocopies at the end of the day.
Yep. At the end of the day, because this guy has been a client of mine for, I would say, almost close to 20 years. Yep.
And that's the kind of client that you want. But again, you need to, indefinite. Yeah, you can keep files indefinitely for electronic records. 2 terabytes goes quite a long way.
Yep.
Right.
And you can always buy more storage.
And you can buy more storage. Absolutely.
Yep. And then you can just go like that. And there's lots of clouds. Clouds are getting cheaper now in cloud programs, and they're also a lot faster.
You can put them on Google. You can put them on Amazon. You can put them on Microsoft. They've all got storage capabilities.
Yep.
And essentially, where you used to be given a free 5 gigabytes of file storage, now you've got companies that are offering 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 terabytes or more.
Yeah, Google, you can get quite a bit.
Yeah.
Hey, they're offering a lot on their Google Drives.
Yeah.
You can keep that. And then what you do is then you have a password. You can't get into it unless you have a password. And then
in fact, it would also pay you to actually think about backing, for example, if you've got a Google Drive, it would pay you to back them up to an Amazon cloud, for example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, particularly one if there could be a large cloud, and particularly one that you don't particularly use very much, then you can have 2003, 2004, 2005, all of those years backed up into the Amazon.
In fact, the reason I was talking about backing them up. So, for example, on the off chance that the Google Cloud were to disappear, you've at least got them sitting on Amazon as well.
Yeah. Well, Google, I think, would give us plenty of warning.
I don't doubt that. Absolutely, they would. But
I'm sure what they would do is probably
I'm actually
clouds projects. I think that's what they'd be doing.
But I was actually thinking more of a terrorist attack on Google.
Google
getting wiped out than
a terrorist attack on Google, something that some people will just plan their whole lives around.
Not that I'm not wishing it upon anybody. I'm not wishing a terrorist attack on anybody.
I mean, there's these companies are providing that, and they're also trying to improve their security all the time.
Oh yeah,
they got people who work there to make sure that these types of attacks are warded off.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's kind of been. I know it's a little bit of a boring subject, but hey, what happens to your files is important for you as a client to know. And all law firms will do what we've been talking about here today. Each of them probably has different practices, but if you're concerned about the retention of your data, your files, etc., just ask.
And the letter goes out, like sometimes you might ask, and it says, okay, I would like to have a copy of my file. And then we can get you a copy of the file. As I said, there could be an administrative charge, and then you get a copy of your file. And then we sign a form with you that the client has received a copy of their file.
Yep.
And what date they received it and who gave it to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right. Okay, so just for everybody to know, this has been brought to you by Invictus Legal with me and myself, Peter Giblett, and Angela, my partner there. Hi, Angela.
Hi.
Okay. And if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so on 905-688-5598 or email Angela at angela@weareinvictus.legal or me at peter@weareinvictus.legal or visit our website at https://weareinvictus.legal, right? And you'll find lots of interesting things there. And I'm going to leave this with Angela's favorite part of the show.
Yep. So what you heard today on Spin Legal, whether this show or in others in our series, it is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, then please contact a paralegal or a lawyer for anything that you think that has legal issues involved. Talk to a paralegal or a lawyer and they will give you some good direction, like that's for your specific situation. Thank you, and
Yeah.
it's a pleasure to have you on our show.
Yeah. And have a great
Any
week.
any comments? It got 0 viewers.
Yeah. Well, but have a great week, everybody.
Okay.
And, and we'll see you this time next week.
Okay. Take
All
care.
right.